Greetings. By virtue of your presence watching this video today, I want you to know that we consider you to be an extended member of our family at Unity in Linwood. We believe that you are an individualized expression of that one creative impetus which stands behind all life, and as such we celebrate the uniqueness which you are, and we celebrate our unity with you. We are glad you're with us.
Yet another of your countless gifts, Ken Yuri. I stand in humility. I've been traveling this week, and one of the great gifts of traveling is I inevitably find myself thinking of you. And it is without exception that my heart is grateful. I so believe in who you are in the world. I believe in what you represent, and I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in how you're doing it. And I'm really honored to walk with you. Good morning, Unity in Linwood. I'd like to begin by acknowledging two people who are, retiring from their long-standing roles. May I bring forth Kitty O. and Marty S. Kitty Okamoto and Marty Schmick, please. Would you join me up front? I'd just like to offer a word of thanks. Kitty Okamoto has given rise to our local human...
You can't read your notes if you have that.
Kitty Okamoto has given rise to our local humanitarian outreach ministry. She is retiring. Marty Schmick, since the beginning of all time, or at least since the beginning of Richard Held time, has been the facilitator of Course in Miracles, and since then, a Course of Love at Unity in Linwood. These are noble souls. I wanted you to have the opportunity to offer them a round of hearty appreciation, please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, lovely soul. Thank you, my brother. Don't be a stranger,
I
right?
like your theme today. The kingdom. They are the kingdom.
How about that? Yeah, you're done now. And I know that had only the meaning which you have attached to it. I'm sorry, it's a Course in Miracles joke. Sorry about that. Oh, goodness gracious. We'd like to invite you. It has been written, the biblical Exodus offers us a rich metaphor supporting our own release from the restrictive patterns of our own conditioned consciousness. You want to hear that again, don't you? Yeah, okay. The biblical Exodus offers us a rich metaphor supporting our own release from the restrictive patterns of our own conditioned consciousness. We would like to invite you to a catered spiritual Seder feast on the 64th of our 64-day program entitled 64 Ways in 64 Days, a Season for Nonviolence. What a way to end a program, don't you think? This is hosted by Rabbi Ted Falcon and our own prayer chaplains. The cost is $40. It is scheduled for April 4th. You may register by visiting the unityinlinwood.org website or by visiting a volunteer in Friendship Hall who is prepared to assist you with something called an iPad. I don't know. It's just what they tell me. Please join Matthew and me, the UIL prayer chaplains, for a Holy Thursday service. It's one of my favorites of the year. It's on March 29th at 7 o'clock p.m. It's been written, this most sacred and experiential service of the year includes beautiful music, a foot-washing ritual, physical communion, candle lighting, and a 12 powers meditation. Every service has an ambassador. This person's role is to support you in your exploration and discovery of this unfolding, evolving divine idea we call Unity in Linwood. It's very nice to see you. We have esteemed guests among us this morning. If you have a question about who we are, about what we believe, about what we teach, about what is available to you, you are welcome to engage this noble soul in conversation that they have a face to put with a name. Would you wave to these kind people, please? Nan Allen is your ambassador at 11 o'clock. The kingdom of heaven, it is a phrase which each of us in this room has most certainly heard. And while I'd be willing to bet that this phrase conjures images which are unique to each of us, there are nonetheless many commonalities. The kingdom of heaven, I would be willing to bet as one example that among those commonalities is an image of a distant geography. In other words, I'd be willing to bet that this kingdom of heaven conjures images of a place. It usually floats somewhere up above the clouds. How am I doing so far? And I'd be willing to bet that among those commonalities is an image of a future time. In other words, I'd be willing to bet that this kingdom of heaven conjures an image of an era which can be initiated only after we've grown weary of these fleshy bags of carbon and atoms we drag around for however long it is that we enjoy this earthly sojourn. So in this paradigm, not only do you have to endure the discomforts of getting to a distant geography and a future time, but if you're like me, you finally stumble over those last exhausted steps of the cloud ladder, only to find yourself standing before a massive gate. And that massive gate is almost always made of some form of heavy metal. It might have jewels, it might have pearls, but it is a gate nonetheless. And this lukewarm welcome is made even less so by the presence of a man carrying a leather binder, a man whose role it is to confirm that you have indeed fulfilled all of the requirements for entrance. So again, not only do you have to endure the discomforts of getting to a distant geography and a future time, only to find yourself standing before a massive gate monitored by any number of celestial bouncers. In this paradigm, you might have done all of it, only to realize that it was for nothing. Because as we all know, in this paradigm, entrance isn't guaranteed. So let's presume for the moment that entrance is granted. So when you stroll with the moxie of a Kardashian at an LA nightclub, if you're like me, you enter this distant geography and a future time walking upon streets which have been paved with gold. And for some reason you're surrounded by harp music. Now honestly, I'm relieved to introduce a series which would exchange literalizing for constructs which are a little closer to here, a little nearer to now, for quite frankly, I don't know if I could take continuous harp music. I happen to agree with what Rabbi Ted Falcon said not so very long ago. If you don't want to listen to it now, what makes you think you want to listen to it for all of eternity? Perhaps my fondest element of this mass projection, this collective agreement, though, is day upon day of wearing nothing except white linen. I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. I mean, everybody looks good in white linen. I suppose I should say that everyone looks good in white linen when it fits properly, that is. I mean, because nobody looks good in white linen when it doesn't fit properly. Now that I think about it, maybe that's what hell is. People dressed in white linen that doesn't fit properly. Could be. Could be. Now, kingdom of God. While this is a phrase that Jesus used during his ministry. He appropriated it from the only Bible he knew, from the only Bible he used, the Hebrew Bible, or what Christians would call the Old Testament. And this kingdom of God often reflects just such a paradigm. It often reflects a distant geography and a future time in which God is akin to the kingly rulers of this earthly plane. But the kingdom of heaven is a phrase that is more specific to his ministry. And clearly these words represent an idea that must have been incredibly important to him, because he spoke of this kingdom of heaven again and again and again. Now, for those who might not have heard of this Jesus, thank you for that. Thank you. He was born in Palestine during the reign of Herod, probably around 4 BC. So no, Jesus was not born on Christmas morning under an evergreen tree as it issued its green self forth from the desert sands. Jesus spent his early years near Nazareth. Arguably, depending upon the source, he never traveled more than 90 miles from his birthplace. He owned nothing. He attended no college. He led no army. He earned no degree. He wrote no book. Baptized by John, his teaching, healing ministry lasted a few years at best. He was a mystic. He was a healer, a teacher of universal wisdom. He was a social prophet, a renewal movement initiator. And he remained deeply, deeply Jewish throughout the entirety of his life. And I think this is important to note again and again, because to attempt to approach any teaching of Jesus outside the Jewish context in which he lived and ministered is a venture as absurd as it is irresponsible. Absurd because a teaching without a context lends itself to undeniable distortion. An undeniable distortion lends itself to unthinkable abuse. So as I've said so many times before, every self-professed Christian really should get a rabbi. Really should get a rabbi. And what a beautiful implication this offers, really, don't you think? I mean, that to partner with a rabbi, to share in the wisdom of other traditions does not threaten our Christian study. It enhances it. How about that? But I digress. This kingdom of heaven. It was an idea that must have been incredibly important to him because he spoke of it again and again and again. He said that the kingdom is like a hidden treasure. He said that the kingdom is like a merchant, that the kingdom is like a sea, that the kingdom is like leaven. One parable begins, and I quote, "The kingdom is like a woman." And frankly, I think it's about time that we see that one. I have this developing theory that behind every enduring problem, somewhere, somehow, there's a man in a tie. But that's another lesson for another Sunday. I won't forget it. It's true. We give a lot of people wearing ties a lot of power. Thank you. Oh, the irony is not lost on me. The irony of what I do for a living is being privileged to get up before you every week and tell you that you have a direct access to the very creative substance of the universe and that you do not need me to access it. The great irony. And come back next week, I'll tell you the same thing in a creative new way. Nonetheless, rather than perpetuating a paradigm in which such words might represent a distant geography in a future time, Jesus said that this kingdom of heaven is within. He said that this kingdom of heaven is at hand. Or to restate this morning's affirmation, the kingdom of heaven is here. And the kingdom of heaven is now. And so what did he mean? What could he have meant? Now, as products of normative Christianity, you might be tempted to come to a service like this, in a building like this, on a morning like this, to get that question answered. I mean, if we were to translate this modern impulse into words, we might hear something akin to, well, I'm going to go to Unity in Linwood so that guy can tell me what Jesus meant. But remember, Jesus was not a product of normative Christianity. Think about it. If Jesus had wanted to spoon-feed his listeners his interpretations of his parables, he would have just done it. In fact, had Jesus wanted to spoon-feed his listeners his interpretations, why use parables at all? Why not just travel from village to village spouting punchlines? But he didn't. And neither will I. Because here's the deal with parabolic teachings. If the point is easy to grasp, it's probably the wrong point. Because Jesus used parabolic teachings to provoke us, to press us beyond ourselves. Jesus used parabolic teachings to challenge our easy answers, to upset our arbitrary conclusions, to confront our habitual perceptions, to unsettle our accepted values, and that usually takes some time. Jesus would have fully expected his listeners to have to chew on the teachings for a certain amount of time to assure that they had sucked the marrow from the very depths. You see, we were meant to find ourselves in these stories and to enter into something of a personal exploration. And when I do say personal, I don't say solitary. He would have expected his listeners to stay in the temple, to stay at the shore, and to continue to discuss, even argue, after he had finished. We were meant to find ourselves in these stories and to enter into a personal exploration of what they might mean in daily life. So while I will offer something of an interpretation of the kingdom of heaven parables over the next 4 weeks, the point isn't to accept my interpretation as your own. The point is to use my interpretation as an encouragement to launch your own interpretation. In other words, over the next few weeks, every time you come up to me in the hallway or every time you send me an email and say, I get something different from that story, I'm going to throw my arms around your neck. I mean, that's if you're a hugger. If you're not a hugger, I'll take your hand in mine. I mean, unless you're really introverted, in which case I'll just stand there awkwardly. And I'll say, bravo, my brother. And I'll say, bravo, my sister. You are catching on. It was Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, who offered quite a sweeping demonstration of this idea. He meditated for hours and hours on biblical writings, and over time he arrived at personal interpretations, which we refer to as metaphysical. So sweeping were these metaphysical interpretations that he ultimately offered the entirety of the Judeo-Christian Bible as a guidebook for what it means to be an unfolding, evolving soul. From the first words of the Torah to the last utterances of Revelation, he framed the entirety of the Bible as something of an owner's manual for what it means to be a human being. And I might argue that while his metaphysical interpretations are rich and impressive, while they're worthy of study, the even higher teaching is the fact that he did the interpreting in the first place. Fillmore didn't take everyone else's opinions about this collection of scrolls. Thank you, Mother Kathy Chalmers. He didn't take everyone else's opinions about this collection of scrolls and regurgitate them. And I don't think he would have expected us to do so either. And so it is that I invite you into an exploration of the instructions left behind by Judaism's most famous rabbi, by Christianity's most revered avatar, instructions which explore this kingdom of heaven, a concept which he offers as neither distant geography nor future time, but as near as your next breath. And I think the implications of this shift are profound. The implications are profound because they represent a shift from a paradigm in which we wait for higher possibility, and surely we can agree that this kingdom of heaven, whether it represents a distant geography and a future time or not, surely we can agree that this can be accepted as something of a higher possibility, can't we? The implications of this represent a shift from a paradigm in which we wait for higher possibility to be revealed to one in which higher possibility waits for us to reveal it. It represents a shift in which we come to understand that no matter what's up in life, higher possibility waits for us to make it welcome. Higher possibility specific to how we are experiencing body. Higher possibility specific to how we're experiencing supply. Higher possibility specific to how we are experiencing relationship. Higher possibility specific to how we are experiencing creativity. It represents a shift in which we come to entertain that no matter what's up in life, there is a realm of perception, understanding, and alignment in which the problem ceases to be the problem, and ours is to seek that realm, not in some distant geography or future time, but right here and right now. It represents a shift from a juvenile paradigm in which we get to think the same thoughts, perpetuate the same beliefs, indulge the same habits, be the same people, and trust that God will fix whatever messes we create. It represents a shift from a juvenile paradigm in which this kingdom of heaven is something of a spectator sport that will one day happen to us, leaving us free from any responsibility whatsoever in the meantime. And the unspoken questions of this juvenile paradigm include, when will God arrive? And what do you think God's going to do about this situation? It represents a shift into the understanding that this kingdom of heaven is something that humanity must, in a very real sense, do. Higher possibility would place each of us on the 50-yard line, at the center court, in the dirt, and otherwise on the playing field, entertaining something of a new, more grown-up question. Take a deep breath. The new, more grown-up question is, what would higher possibility ask me to become today? Let's take that question into a time of reflection. Let's allow it to dance. Let's allow it to inspire, to inform, to elevate, to uplift. Let's just take a breath. Let's close our outer eyes to that world of distraction, that world of apparent separation, that world of seeming limitation. And let's follow the breath to that expansive inner realm that knows of a higher truth. And with another deep breath, we allow the same question to float before our vision. What would higher wisdom, what would higher possibility have me become today? And we watch, and we listen, and we feel. What would a higher possibility here and now, what would a higher possibility have me become today?
Thanks again for joining us. Please visit unityinlinwood.org for a preview of all upcoming classes, services, and events, and for an opportunity to make a gift to our community should you so choose. Thank you.